Okay, Martin Luther King Part 6. Action.
For several months after the Albany setback, Martin had a little contact with
By the
the
way,
public.
it's 80s day at school, so you're dressed like kind of like Run DMC, right?
He seemed to be unhappy, though friends told him that he had made a new difference in Albany. At last he agreed Negroes have straightened their backs in Albany. Martin said, once a man straightens his back, you can't write him anymore. But there are still white racists in the South who didn't want equal rights for African Americans. Dr. King was speaking in Birmingham during the SELC convention when a white supremacist leaped on stage and struck him. After the attack, the attacker was caught by SCLC members and the police. Martin asked that no charges be such people. Martin explained, "This system that we live under creates such people." Martin explained, "I'm not interested in pressing charges. I'm interested in changing the kind of system that produces this kind of man." Another troubled city in the verge of an explosion in spring 1963 in Birmingham, Alabama. Martin had spent so much of his time since the Albany confrontation traveling around the nation, raising the funds in Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Aware of the courageous struggle against the discrimination in Birmingham, Martin focused attention on the city. Members of the SCLC devoted lots of time and study in the next campaign. They did not want to make the same mistakes they had made in Albany. Martin in Albany was in Birmingham and began holding meetings at various churches, hoping they could gather people needed to carry out the long struggle. 2 small protest marches and sit-ins were not effective. A march in the federal building was far more successful. 42 people who were arrested, creating lots of publicity. And then hundreds of protesters took the streets. This huge gathering was historic. When the Public Safety Commissioner Eugene Bill Connor set loose dogs and demonstrators, the nation watching on TV reacted with horror.
So they set dogs loose. That's why. Remember the jail wanted to let them out because they didn't want Martin Luther King to have any publicity. So this time, this guy who was hating on the African Americans set dogs out on the protesters, and then now the world watched it on TV. I was like, oh my God, horrified. How could they do this, right? You know, can you imagine, right? They'd be horrified.
Yeah.
And then that puts more pressure on the people who are being mean to stop being mean. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Activities, unwise and untimely. Seldom do I pause to answer criticism of my work and ideas, but well, since I feel that you are the man of genius good, I will like to answer your statement. The purpose of our direct action program is to create a situation so crisis packed to that will inevitably open the door to negotiation. Too long our beloved Southland been bogged down in a tragic effort to live in monologue rather than dislogue. We know through your painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by an oppressor. It is demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I have yet to engage in the direct act action cam page that was well timed in the view of those who had not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For 4 years now, I have heard the word "wait," and it rings in the ear.
Okay. He's sitting in jail?
Yeah.
Okay. That's very famous. The Letters from Birmingham Jail is a very famous pieces of paper that he wrote. Very famous.
Of every Negro, this wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see that justice too long delayed is justice denied. Martin's long letter was written mostly on scraps of paper and smuggled out of jail a few pages at a time. While Luther King was in jail, the civil rights movement gathered strength. Day after day, large crowds clashed into police.
And the police what? Oh, you looking at pictures?
Yeah.
What's going on in the pictures?
Dogs and fire hoses.
They're spraying fire hoses at the black people?
Yeah. And dogs.
Like dogs on the black people? That's horrible, right?
Yeah.
What would you do if you were out there?
Just try to avoid it.
Would you protest for your rights?
Maybe.
Yeah, me too. We'd be right there beside Martin Luther King protesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who brutalized them? It is said that clashed with police who brutalized them. It is said that blood flowed in the streets. But as these brutal attacks included victorious dogs and thunderous streams of water sprayed in the force-feared fire hoses, could not stop the tide of civil resistance. While Martin was in jail for a week before he was released, this pushed the protest up to another level. With their backs against the wall from the show and unity and strength that Martin and his followers, the city merchants, asked for a temporary peace in order to discuss a possible agreement. An accord was finally announced. It was a tremendous victory for civil rights movement. Martin's determination to use non-violent forms of protest was successful. It was also dramatic, beginning even more of the important step. Martin's victorious campaign in Birmingham did not go unnoticed. At the White House in June, President Kennedy told the nation it was time to grant all Americans equal rights and equal opportunities. Who among us would be content to have this color of skin changed in the stand of his place? Said Kennedy, speaking on behalf of all black.
What's John Kennedy talking about?
He's saying who would be among them for the content of the council's impatient delay.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Well, he's saying if you read a paragraph earlier, a couple sentences earlier.
Martin's victorious campaigns in Birmingham did not go unnoticed.
Okay, didn't go unnoticed.
At the White House in June, President Kennedy told the nation that it was time to grant all Americans equal rights.
Okay, right there. So look up. What did President Kennedy tell all Americans? Look up to me. Look up at me. What do you remember him? What did he tell them? Just look up.
All Americans need equal rights.
Yeah, it's time to give all Americans. So what does that mean?
That means they have to have war.
Huh?
They have to have war.
War? Why?
Because they want the white people to be more power than the black people.
Well, no. They said it's time to give all Americans equal rights now. So first, the white people had more rights than the black people, right? And now John F. Kennedy saying, no, that time's over. The president makes the biggest decisions. So it's time to give all Americans equal rights. So what Martin Luther King's been fighting for the whole time, what he's been fighting for, he's about to get. Kennedy's saying it's time to give all Americans equal rights. You know? Okay, go.
Who among us would be content and the color of his skin changed and stand of his place? Said Kennedy, speaking on behalf of all black Americans. Who among us would then be content with the counsels of patience and delay? What was needed was a civil rights bill.
Civil rights bill. That's a piece of paper. That's like a law. Bill of rights, you know?
Yeah. No one has pushed President Kennedy harder on this matter than his brother Robert, the Attorney General. The news was cheered in the black community. People greeted the bill like it was the second emancipation.
The second emancipation?
Yeah.
The first emancipation was when the blacks used to be slaves, and they said you have to free the blacks from slavery. So now we've been freed from slavery, but we're not free to get equal rights. We have rights, but they're not equal. So first emancipation was when Abraham Lincoln freed all the slaves. They're saying this is like the second emancipation practically.
Yeah. The Great Freedom Document issued by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863, freeing the slaves in parts of the South. But it was a response from the racists that caught everybody's attention next. On the very same evening of Kennedy's speech, Medgar Evers and the NAACP leader in Jackson, Mississippi, was murdered on his doorstep. Evers was a fearless man, greatly admired and deeply devoted father and his young family. He could talk to the children and tell them what was happening.
So what happened?
They killed
another civil rights leader?
Yeah.
Named Medgar Evers?
Yeah.
Wow. He was a black guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His wife, Mary, recalled he would devise a game where they would decide what the safest place in the house to hide if something happened. When children made a decision, their father the bathtub would be the safest. They could not understand everything, but they were well aware that their father's life was in danger. At their young ages, 3, 8, and 9, they're worried consistently about that. News of Evers' death deeply troubled Martin and reminded him of danger he faced as a leader. Negroes tragically no publicity occasion well. He wrote in his book Why We Can't Wait, in the life of Negroes civil rights leaders. The whine of the bullet from ambush and the roar of a bomb and was often broken in the night silence. Besides Evers, there were many other murdered in the civil rights movement during this period, including Mr. and Mrs. Harry T. Moore, Mrs. and Mr. Harry T. Moore, NAACP leaders in Florida. There are Reverend George Lee of Belzoni, Mississippi, William Moore in Alabama, and most tragically for little black girls, Carol Robertson, Clinley Weasley, Denise McNair, and Addie McClelland.
Those are all people that have been killed?
Yeah, who died after a bombing of 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham.
Wow, it was very dangerous over there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like war, right?
Yeah. Alabama, less than a month after historical march in Washington. The thundering events of summer required the appropriate climax. Martin said in the Dean of Negro Leaders, a Philip Randolph once said, the march of Washington to unite, one luminous action of all the forces along the far-flung front. Chapter 6. I have a dream. The day of March was sunny and bright. There was a feeling of unity and victory in the air. As 250 people gathered along the main stretching from Lincoln Memorial to the Washington Monument. Among the marchers waiting to hear a list of well-known speakers and were some 6,000 white people, many of them representing labor unions, stationed on the edge of grounds were squadrons of police, and there are 4,000 military troops. They are prepared for violence, but it never came. What did come were some of the most memorable words in American history.
What are they doing?
The I have a dream speech.
Oh, they're marching on Washington?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. All right, here we go.
I have a dream that one day this nation... Wait, hold on. Martin Luther King cast will spell over listeners with his historic I have a dream speech. This is the speech.
Okay.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of this creed. We hold these truths in self-evident that all men are created equal. Martin began at the first reading from the text and speaking from his heart. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and sons of former slaves owners will be able to sit down together in the table of brotherhood. With each stage of the speech, Martin was hailed with loud and cheering applause. At the outbreak, like thunder rose, and his closing remarks, let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. When we let freedom ring, we let it ring from every village and hamlet. From every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all the God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. But the terrible sense of loss soon replaced the happiness and hope. Durr King and the others have brought both black and white Americans to the march. Martin was at home in Atlanta packing for yet another trip when he heard that President John
Fitzgerald John F.
Kennedy had assisted. Stunned of the news, Martin stopped and sat silently in front of the TV with his wife and close friend.
An assassin. Okay, pause it. Close the book right there. Let's go. Good job. Okay, we'll pick it up tomorrow. Part 7. Let's go.